The sun dipped low over the dusty plains, casting a golden hue across the small town of Redstone. Clara Hensley, a tough-as-nails rancher with calloused hands and a heart as wide as her sprawling cattle ranch, was loading feed sacks into her truck outside Miller's General Store. Her weathered boots crunched on the gravel as she paused, noticing a commotion at the store's entrance. A young man, no older than 20, stood there, his clothes tattered and his face smudged with dirt. His name was Eli, though Clara didn't know it yet. The store clerk, Mr. Jenkins, waved him off, his voice sharp. "No money, no goods. Get out." Eli's shoulders slumped, his eyes darting to the ground as he turned to leave, clutching a worn-out satchel. Clara's brow furrowed. She'd seen hard times herself. Droughts that killed crops, winters that starved cattle, but she'd never seen someone so defeated. She set down her sack, dusted her hands on her jeans, and called out, "Hey, kid, hold up." Eli froze, wary, as Clara strode toward him, her boots kicking up dust. "Come with me," she said, her voice firm but kind. "I'll fix this." She didn't know why she said it, but something in his hollow gaze stirred her. She led him to her truck, ignoring Jenkins' scowl. Eli hesitated, then followed, unsure of what this stranger intended. Clara wasn't sure herself, but she knew one thing. No one went hungry in Redstone while she had breath in her lungs. Clara's truck rumbled down the dirt road toward her ranch, the horizon swallowing the last of the daylight. Eli sat quietly in the passenger seat, his hands fidgeting with the frayed hem of his jacket. Clara stole glances at him, noting the way his cheekbones jutted out, a sign of too many missed meals. "What's your name, kid?" she asked, her tone softer now. "Eli," he mumbled, barely audible over the engine's hum. She nodded, keeping her eyes on the road. "You got a story, Eli." He shrugged, staring out the window at the endless fields. "Ran away," he said finally. "Family's gone. Been drifting." Clara didn't press further, she knew the weight of loss too well. Her own husband had passed 5 years ago, leaving her to run the ranch alone. She pulled up to her weathered farmhouse, its porch sagging but sturdy. "Come on," she said, climbing out. Eli followed, hesitant, as she led him inside. The kitchen smelled of fresh bread and coffee. Clara pointed to a chair. "Sit, eat." She set a plate of cornbread and stew in front of him, watching as he devoured it like a starving wolf. Between bites, he muttered thanks, his eyes avoiding hers. Clara leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You're staying here tonight," she declared. "Got a spare room." Eli started to protest, but she cut him off. "No arguments. Tomorrow, we'll figure out what's next." Her tone left no room for debate, and Eli nodded, too tired to resist her kindness. Morning broke over the ranch, the air crisp and filled with the lowing of cattle. Clara was up before dawn, as always, tending to chores. Eli emerged from the spare room, looking slightly less haunted after a night's sleep and a hot shower. Clara handed him a pair of her late husband's boots, worn but better than the rags on Eli's feet. "If you're staying, you're working," she said, tossing him a pair of gloves. Eli blinked, unsure, but followed her to the barn. Clara showed him how to muck stalls, her instructions clear and patient. He was clumsy at first, but his hands were quick to learn. As they worked, Clara shared stories of the ranch, how she'd fought to keep it after her husband's death, how the townsfolk had rallied around her. Eli listened, saying little, but his guarded demeanor softened. By midday, they sat on hay bales, sharing a thermos of coffee. "Why are you doing this?" Eli asked, suddenly, his voice tinged with suspicion. Clara shrugged. "Seen too many folks turned away when they needed help. Ain't right." She paused, studying him. "You got potential, Eli. Just need a chance." He looked away, his jaw tight, but Clara saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. She stood, brushing hay from her jeans. "Come on, we've got fences to mend." As they worked under the wide sky, Clara felt a quiet certainty. This boy, lost as he was, belonged here. She'd make sure he knew it. Days turned into weeks, and Eli became a fixture on the ranch. Clara taught him to ride, to rope, to read the weather in the clouds. He was a quick study, his wiry frame growing stronger with each passing day. The townsfolk noticed the change when Clara brought him to Redstone for supplies. Where they'd once ignored the ragged drifter, they now nodded in greeting, curious about the boy at Clara's side. Mr. Jenkins, the store clerk, still eyed Eli warily, but Clara's glare kept his tongue in check. One afternoon, as they loaded hay into the barn, Eli opened up more than usual. Used to dream of being a mechanic, he admitted, wiping sweat from his brow. Fixed cars with my dad before, everything. Clara nodded, filing that away. The next day, she drove him to Old Man Tucker's garage, where Eli's eyes lit up at the sight of engines and tools. Tucker, a friend of Clara's, agreed to let Eli apprentice part-time. Boys got a knack, Tucker said after a week, impressed. Clara grinned, proud but unsurprised. Back at the ranch, Eli began fixing her old tractor, his hands steady and sure. Clara watched from the porch, sipping coffee, her heart swelling. She'd given him a chance, but he was building his own future. Still, she worried. Eli carried ghosts in his eyes, and she knew not all wounds healed easily. She vowed to be there when he stumbled. Trouble came on a chilly evening when a stranger rolled into Redstone, asking questions about a runaway matching Eli's description. Clara overheard the gossip at the diner, where she'd taken Eli for a rare treat. The man, rough-looking with a scar across his cheek, claimed to be Eli's uncle, but his story didn't sit right with Clara. She glanced at Eli, who'd gone pale, his fork frozen midair. Back at the ranch, she sat him down. "Talk to me," she said, her voice steady. Eli's story spilled out. A violent home, a father who drank, an uncle who was worse. He'd run to escape them. Clara's jaw tightened. "You're safe here," she promised. The next day, she confronted the stranger at the town's edge, her shotgun resting casually on her shoulder. "Eli's under my protection," she said, her eyes like steel. "Leave." The man sneered but backed off, sensing her resolve. Clara didn't tell Eli about the encounter, but she doubled down on teaching him to stand tall. She showed him how to shoot, how to negotiate with suppliers, how to trust himself. Eli soaked it up, his confidence growing. Clara saw the boy he'd been fading, replaced by a young man with fire in his soul. She didn't know if the uncle would return, but she'd be ready. For now, Eli was hers to protect. Spring brought new life to the ranch, calves wobbling in the fields, wildflowers dotting the hills. Eli was no longer just a helper, he was Clara's partner, handling chores with skill and suggesting improvements to the ranch's operations. He'd rigged a better irrigation system, saving water during the dry season. Clara marveled at his ingenuity, wondering how anyone could have overlooked him. In town, Eli was earning respect. Tucker sang his praises, and even Jenkins grudgingly admitted the boy was decent. One evening, Clara found Eli sketching engine designs in a notebook, his face lit with purpose. "Thinking of building something new?" she asked. Eli nodded, shy but eager. "Maybe a shop of my own one day." Clara smiled, seeing the future he was starting to dream. She began setting aside money, quietly planning to help him start that shop. But not all was smooth. Eli still had nightmares, waking in a sweat, haunted by his past. Clara would sit with him, saying little, just there. One night, he confessed, "I don't know why you trust me." Clara chuckled. "'Cause you've earned it, kid." She told him about her own struggles, how she'd nearly lost the ranch, how faith in herself had pulled her through. Eli listened, his eyes steady. Clara knew he wasn't whole yet, but he was healing. She'd make sure he had the time and space to get there. By summer, the ranch was thriving, and so was Eli. He'd built a reputation in Redstone as Clara's right-hand man, and folks stopped seeing him as the drifter he'd been. At the town fair, Eli entered a repaired vintage motorcycle in the show, one he'd restored with Tucker. It won first place, and Clara cheered louder than anyone, her pride unmistakable. Afterward, she pulled him aside. "You're not just passing through, Eli. This is your home if you want it." For the first time, Eli smiled, a real, unguarded smile. He didn't say much, but his nod spoke volumes. That night, they sat on the porch, watching fireflies dance. Clara shared stories of her husband, how he'd loved this land, how he'd have liked Eli. Eli admitted he felt like he belonged somewhere for the first time. But Clara sensed he was still wrestling with his past, afraid it might catch up. She didn't push, knowing trust took time. Instead, she focused on the present, teaching him to manage the ranch's books, encouraging his mechanical dreams. She even let him name a newborn calf, a small gesture that made him grin. Clara knew she wasn't just giving him a job or a roof, she was giving him a family. And in return, Eli was giving her purpose, a reason to keep fighting for the ranch. As autumn painted the hills red and gold, Clara and Eli prepared the ranch for winter. They worked side by side, their rhythm seamless, like they'd been a team for years. Eli had grown taller, his frame filled out, his laughter more frequent. He'd started talking about the future, maybe a garage in Redstone, maybe staying on the ranch too. Clara listened, her heart full. One crisp morning, a letter arrived from a lawyer in a distant city. Eli's uncle had been arrested, his claims to Eli debunked. The boy was free, legally and truly. Clara handed him the letter, watching his face shift from fear to relief. "You're your own man now," she said. Eli nodded, his eyes misty. That evening, they celebrated with a bonfire, the townsfolk joining them. Tucker brought his guitar, and kids ran through the fields, their laughter echoing. Clara looked at Eli, joking with the others, and felt a weight lift. She'd seen him turned away, broken and lost, and she'd said, "Come with me." That choice had changed everything. As the fire crackled, Eli raised a glass to her, his voice steady. "To Clara, who fixed me." She shook her head, smiling. "You fixed yourself, kid." Redstone glowed under the stars, and Clara knew this was just the beginning for them both.